reality in digital intimate spaces is that HIV-positive users often experience difficulty disclosing their HIV status on dating apps. Although a profile may only show a label or a small piece of health information, these details are rarely understood as neutral. Instead, disclosure can become tied to fear, stigma, and judgment. In this way, the dating app becomes more than a space for connection. It also becomes a space where HIV-positive identity is made difficult to speak. Part of this difficulty comes from the way meaning is socially organized on dating apps. Labels like positive, negative, and undetectable may look like simple profile details, but they do much more than describe. They sort, organize, meaning, and shape who is rated as safe and who is made to feel risky. A label does not arrive alone. It arrives with assumptions. It can carry ideas about danger, responsibility, honesty, and whether someone should have disclosed earlier or whether they should disclose at all. In this way, a profile is never just a profile. It is also a social text, and within that text, HIV-positive identity is often interpreted through judgment before intimacy has the chance to become human. This is why dating apps cannot be understood as neutral technological spaces. As Connor 2019 notes, dating apps are no different because online spaces exist in and through real-life dynamics, P398. In other words, the meanings attached to HIV-related labels are shaped by wider social discourse rather than by the platform alone. Hughes 2017 deepens this point by arguing that stigma is not simply a personal attitude, but a relationship between an attribute and a stereotype, P9. From this perspective, labels such as positive, negative, and undetectable do not merely present information. They attach HIV status to broader meanings of deviance, responsibility, and risk. A single label can therefore be enough to shape how a person is socially read and judged before any interaction develops further.
I've used some of the mainstream ones like Tinder, mostly just to browse, meet people, and chat a bit. If I see something related to HIV, my first reaction is to be cautious. I might start wondering if the person is HIV positive or think more about their lifestyle. Even if I do not say anything, I would probably keep some distance mentally and be more careful. I may not want to continue this conversation. I think it could be useful because it helps me feel more certain. This kind of information would definitely affect whether I want to interact with someone. From my perspective, it's also about protecting my own health. Having that information would make me feel more certain or secure. My first reaction would be like to link it to risk. Especially if someone is positive, I would immediately feel that it might not be safe. And I would become more cautious. I might even feel a bit uncomfortable. Yes, I would. If someone is labeled as positive, I probably would not continue chatting and definitely wouldn't meet in person. To me, it's not just information. It directly affects how I judge the situation. I would worry about health risks and possible consequences. So I would usually choose not to continue.
Yes, I've used apps like Grindr, Blues, Tinder, and others. I've tried quite a few different platforms. Personally, I don't have a strong reaction. In the gay community and on these apps, this kind of information is not unfamiliar. To me, it feels more like healthy related background information rather than something that immediately leads to negative judgment. I think it's necessary. Although HIV cannot be cured, it cannot be well managed with medication and protection. For people using dating apps to build intimate or sexual relationships, this kind of information is important. It's not about excluding people, but about having more informed communication. I wouldn't have a strong reaction. I would see it as additional information rather than something that determines whether the person is safe or not. For me, the label itself doesn't automatically mean danger. Not really. Whether someone is HIV positive doesn't directly determine how I judge them. There are many ways to reduce risk, like PrEP, condoms, testing, and communication. I think what matters more is whether both people are responsible and aware of protection, rather than just rely on a label.
I got a lot of really rude, nasty messages online from people with no profile pictures, no way to identify who they were, and just, saying that, I'm giving people AIDS on purpose, or that I am infecting people, that I'm going to die, that I deserved it because I'm sexually free or sexually liberated, so I deserve it, that I'm a slut.
It actually really sucks. For instance, on Grindr, I've been blocked when I've been open and honest. They solely look at your diagnosis, categorize you like most of us do in America, put you in a box, and then kind of shove you off to the side.
Even in this small comparison, it becomes clear that HIV-related labels can take on different meanings across different digital intimate contexts. But these meanings do not stay at the level of judgment alone. They also move into the body, into distance, and into everyday interaction. For some users, the label becomes a reason not to continue chatting, not to meet, and to keep distance even before any physical contact takes place. This movement from judgment to interaction is also reflected in the focus group accounts of HIV-positive users. One participant described receiving anonymous abusive messages after openly disclosing his HIV-positive status on a dating app. Another said that although he was being honest and transparent, he was still blocked, as if his entire identity had been reduced to one label. In this way, HIV-related meaning becomes material. It appears in hesitation, avoidance, silence, blocking, and the management of closeness. Mahbub helps explain this shift from language to embodiment. He argues that language names and sorts out stuff, and that, through this sorting, people create knowledge that connects them to the physical world. From this perspective, HIV-related labels do not remain abstract words on the screen. They begin to shape bodily comfort and discomfort, closeness and withdrawal, before bodies even meet. This is how meaning begins to take shape. HIV-positive identity is not given a fixed meaning in advance. It becomes meaningful through the interaction of labels, judgment, bodies, space, and reaction. For one participant, positive immediately became risk, discomfort, and disengagement. For the other, it remained additional information that needed to be understood in relation to protection, communication, and responsibility. The focus group accounts then show what happens when these meanings are acted upon. Disclosure does not remain a neutral act of honesty. It can trigger abusive messages, blocking, and the reduction of a person to a single stigmatized category. This shows that the meaning of HIV-positive identity is not located in the word alone. It is produced through the way the label is read, the way the body is imagined, and the way intimacy is managed. As Mahbub suggests, once users are sorted through labels, the label no longer simply displays information.
It begins to organize how that person is known, felt, and responded to. Meaning is therefore produced not by language alone, but through the combined force of social interpretation, bodily reaction, and the everyday management of intimacy.
The PDA moment in this story appears in the ways official policy, public health discourse, and community-based campaigns work to reframe HIV-positive identity beyond danger and stigma. The New South Wales HIV Strategy 2021 to 2025 explicitly identifies reducing stigma as one of its 4 core objectives and sets measurable targets to reduce both reported stigma in healthcare settings and discriminatory attitudes in the general public by 75%. In 2024, ASHM also highlighted Australia's formal signing of the global U=U call to action, making it the 4th country in the world to do so. At the community level, ACON's Tackling HIV Stigma Changes the Conversation campaign uses lived experience and allyship to shift how HIV is talked about, while Positive Life NSW provides confidential counseling and peer support for people living with HIV. Together, these forms of positive discourse do not erase stigma completely, but they do challenge the assumption that HIV-positive identity must always be read through fear, shame, or exclusion. Instead, they create space for HIV-positive identity to be understood as manageable, livable, and compatible with intimacy, care, and informed relationships. In this sense, PDA is not simply about describing positive messages. It is about showing how policy, campaigns, and support systems can actively reshape meanings and make different practices of disclosure, intimacy, and self-understanding more possible.